Once again, Washington, D.C. became the battleground for another explosive political showdown, and this time, it was between Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett and Karoline Leavitt, former Trump White House Assistant Press Secretary and rising Republican media firebrand. Sparks flew when Leavitt dropped a series of scathing criticisms aimed directly at Vice President Kamala Harris, setting off a fiery response that quickly turned into a viral political moment. It all began during a heated segment on a popular Sunday political talk show, where Leavitt, never one to hold back, accused Vice President Kamala Harris of being not only incompetent, but also emblematic of everything she says is wrong with the current administration. Leavitt, clearly on a mission to make headlines, slammed Harris for what she called a consistent pattern of failure, referring to everything from the border crisis to economic messaging to Harris's public approval ratings, which have remained historically low. Karoline didn't stop there. With a sharp tone and well-rehearsed confidence, she went on to say, "Kamala Harris is not just unpopular, she's ineffective. She was given key responsibilities like the border, and what has she done? Nothing. Americans aren't stupid. They can see through the empty words and rehearsed speeches. She's been a liability to Biden from day one." Leavitt's pointed remarks were part of a larger Republican narrative, one that paints Harris as a weak link in the Democratic chain, and the GOP is eager to exploit that ahead of the 2024 elections. But before the segment could wrap, Jasmine Crockett, known for her unapologetic tone and willingness to jump into the fire, interjected with passion, determination, and fire in her voice. Crockett, a freshman congresswoman from Texas, didn't hesitate. She leaned forward, looked directly at Leavitt, and let loose. "Let me tell you something," Crockett started. "I am so sick and tired of the right wing's obsession with disrespecting black women in power. Y'all did it to Michelle Obama. You did it to Stacey Abrams. And now you've been doing it to Kamala Harris since the day she stepped into office. It's lazy, it's tired, and it's racist, whether y'all want to admit it or not." The room fell silent for a moment as Crockett's words hung in the air like a thunderclap. She wasn't just defending Harris. She was drawing a line in the sand. But Crockett wasn't done. Her voice grew even more assertive as she continued. "Kamala Harris has spent her career breaking barriers. As the first Black and South Asian woman to be vice president, she's not only made history, she's dealt with a level of scrutiny that no other VP has had to face. And yet, every time she does her job, the media and folks like you try to twist it into failure. Why? Because she's not doing it the way you want her to?" Leavitt tried to push back, attempting to say, "This isn't about race, this is about results." But Crockett cut her off with razor-sharp precision. "No, it's always about race when a black woman dares to lead with confidence and not ask for your approval. You don't like Kamala Harris because she doesn't shrink herself for your comfort. And let's be honest, y'all don't want to see a woman of color succeed at the highest levels of power. That's the truth." The mime exchange quickly went viral, with clips of Crockett's passionate defense of Harris spreading like wildfire across social media. Hashtags like #Crockett Clapback and #Kamala Strong trended on Twitter within hours as political commentators and everyday viewers weighed in. Some praised Crockett's courage and candor, calling her response long overdue. Others criticized her for playing the race card, a claim that Crockett herself addressed later in a follow-up interview. "People say I played the race card," she said. "No, I played the truth card. And if that truth makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's time to ask why." Crockett then laid out what she called the double standard in American politics, especially as it pertains to women of color. She brought up the endless coverage of Harris's laugh, wardrobe, speaking style, and background, things that male politicians, and especially white politicians, rarely get scrutinized for. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt stuck to her guns. In a follow-up interview on a conservative talk radio show, she doubled down on her remarks, saying, "The left can cry racism all they want, but it doesn't change the fact that Kamala Harris has failed in every major task she's been given. That's not racism, that's accountability." The divide between the two sides became even clearer in the days that followed. Mainstream news outlets dissected every second of the exchange, while political YouTubers and podcasters on both ends of the spectrum jumped into the fray. Memes flooded Instagram and TikTok, with many portraying Crockett as a modern-day gladiator fighting back against political spin. And then came the op-eds. Columnists from the Washington Post, The Hill, and Rolling Stone jumped in, offering varying takes. Some called Leavitt's comments predictably partisan, while others labeled Crockett a rising star in the Democratic Party. One commentator even went so far as to say, "This was Jasmine Crockett's AOC moment, a breakthrough that signals she's ready to step into the national spotlight." Jasmine Crockett's political star has indeed been rising, even before this confrontation. A civil rights attorney turned legislator, she's been making waves in the House with her fierce advocacy and unfiltered rhetoric. But this moment, this firestorm exchange, has catapulted her into a new level of public consciousness. And as the 2024 election season heats up, moments like this are only going to become more common. The political lines are drawn, and both parties are locking in their strategies. For Republicans, figures like Karoline Leavitt are sharpening their attacks, aiming to sow doubt and discredit Biden and Harris at every turn. For Democrats, firebrands like Jasmine Crockett are stepping up to meet that energy head-on. As for Kamala Harris herself, she hasn't publicly responded to the comments yet. But sources close to the vice president say she's grateful for the defense and encouraged by the rising voices of lawmakers like Crockett. One thing is certain, this clash wasn't just about two women on opposing sides of the political spectrum. It was a reflection of deeper battles about race, gender, power, and who gets to lead in America without apology. And judging by the reaction, America is still very much wrestling with those questions. In a media environment dominated by sound bites and outrage, this exchange stood out for its authenticity. It wasn't just political theater. It was personal, and for many watching, it was a reminder that behind every policy debate, there are people, identities, and histories that shape the conversation. Crockett may have been defending Harris, but in doing so, she sent a larger message to America. Black women in power are not here to be silent, and they're not going to be intimidated. They're here to lead, and they're done asking for permission. So the next time someone tries to write off Kamala Harris, or any woman of color in power, just remember this moment. Because Jasmine Crockett made it clear, the days of staying silent are over. This political storm may pass, but the echoes of this confrontation will linger, especially as America inches closer to yet another pivotal election cycle. One thing's for sure, Jasmine Crockett isn't going anywhere. And after this, neither is the conversation she ignited. And as the conversation continues to reverberate across political circles, it's clear that this wasn't just another media spat. It marked a turning point in how Democrats might start fighting back. In the days following the viral moment, Crockett took to several media platforms to elaborate on her position. On MSNBC, she delivered a pointed message. "It's time we stop letting these bad faith actors define our leaders. Karoline Leavitt doesn't speak for the American people. She speaks for an extremist minority that's obsessed with tearing down progress, especially when it's led by women who look like me." Her unapologetic tone quickly turned her into a household name among progressive voters. Social media pages supporting her grew exponentially overnight. Young voters in particular gravitated toward her message, seeing her as a fearless voice, willing to say what many others tiptoe around. Meanwhile, Republicans began framing the blowback as overblown liberal outrage. Conservative outlets ran headlines like, "Democrats cry racism to protect Kamala," and "Crockett melts down over basic criticism." Right-wing talk show hosts accused Crockett of being more interested in identity politics than actual policy. But what many of those critics failed to acknowledge was that Crockett did talk policy extensively. In several interviews following the exchange, she broke down the vice president's work on key issues like reproductive rights, climate investments through the Inflation Reduction Act, and minority business development programs that rarely get coverage in mainstream political debates. "It's easy to attack when you're not paying attention," Crockett said in a podcast appearance. But if you look at the actual record, Kamala Harris has done more behind the scenes than people realize. The problem is that the media doesn't amplify that. It amplifies the drama. Political analysts began to weigh in as well. One Democratic strategist on CNN said, "This moment shows a new generation of leaders is emerging, leaders who are unafraid to call out not just opposition policies, but the coded language and systemic bias that so often comes with them." Karoline Leavitt, however, saw the attention as a badge of honor. She posted on X, formerly Twitter, "The left is melting down because I told the truth about Kamala Harris. Jasmine Crockett can shout all she wants. Americans are still struggling under this administration. That's what matters." Her remarks were quickly shared by prominent GOP figures, including members of Congress and former Trump advisors. Some praised Leavitt for her fearlessness, while others used the moment to boost fundraising efforts, calling on supporters to stand up to the radical left. The political lines were now fully entrenched. On one side, Crockett and her supporters stood defiantly, defending Harris in what they see as an urgent need to confront racial and gender bias in politics. On the other, Republicans like Leavitt doubled down, focusing on polling numbers and perceived failures. And yet this battle revealed something deeper. Beyond the talking points and the campaign trail jabs, it exposed the growing influence of media-savvy politicians like Crockett, figures who understand how to leverage a moment into a movement. Her team confirmed that after the incident, donations to her campaign saw a major spike. Requests for appearances poured in. Activist groups reached out offering support and collaboration. It was more than a viral moment. It was momentum. In response, Democratic leadership began highlighting Crockett more prominently. She appeared alongside senior party members at key events and was invited to headline major fundraisers. Her influence was growing fast, and many within the party started to view her as one of the voices that could mobilize younger, more diverse voters, especially heading into 2024. And make no mistake, this moment wasn't just about Kamala Harris or Karoline Leavitt. It tapped into something larger, a generational shift in American politics, one where the old playbook, staying polite in the face of coded attacks, no longer works. Crockett represented that shift. And whether you agree with her or not, it's impossible to deny that her passion, authenticity, and firepower are shaking things up. As for Kamala Harris, those close to her say she's watching carefully. Sources within the White House revealed she's encouraged by the new wave of lawmakers, standing up for democratic values and pushing back against what they see as toxic rhetoric. And while Harris herself may continue to maintain a more reserved public posture, the Crockett moment gave her defenders a new blueprint: stop being defensive and start being bold. The political landscape is evolving, and this incident could be a sign of what's to come. Fewer rehearsed talking points, more raw confrontation. The stakes are high, and both sides are preparing for a bruising 2024 showdown. One Democratic insider summed it up best. What Jasmine did wasn't just a defense of Kamala, it was a wake-up call. We can't let Republicans define our leaders anymore. We've got to fight fire with fire. So whether you see this as a meltdown or a moment of truth, one thing is clear. Jasmine Crockett made waves that won't fade anytime soon. And if this was her breakout, we're just beginning to see what she and others like her are capable of in this new era of unapologetic, no-holds-barred politics. Stay tuned. Because this isn't just a headline, it's a signal of the battles brewing beneath the surface. And Jasmine Crockett, she's just getting started. And as the weeks unfolded, it became clear. Jasmine Crockett's fiery takedown of Karoline Leavitt wasn't just a flash in the pan. It was a political ignition. She'd tapped into a wave of frustration that had been bubbling beneath the surface. For years, among Democratic voters, especially black women, who have long felt like their voices were dismissed or drowned out in mainstream political discourse. That emotion translated into real momentum. At community events, college campuses, and online forums, people began to talk about the Crockett effect. Young activists referenced her as a symbol of unfiltered truth-telling. Political organizers cited her as proof that authenticity still matters in a world driven by manufactured soundbites. Even some veteran Democrats, often cautious in their rhetoric, started to echo her unapologetic tone. During a town hall in Houston, Crockett addressed a packed auditorium. "I didn't plan to go viral," she told the crowd, "but I'm glad the truth hit a nerve, because the time for being polite about racism, sexism, and double standards is over. We've been polite long enough." The crowd erupted in applause, and chants of "say it louder" filled the room. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt leaned further into her strategy. On Fox News, she painted Crockett as part of the radical left and warned that the Democratic Party was being hijacked by angry identity politicians. In her view, the entire blow-up proved that conservatives were getting under the skin of their opponents and winning. "They don't want to debate the facts," Leavitt said. "They just want to shame you into silence. Well, I won't be silenced, not by Jasmine Crockett, and not by anyone else." Her comments played well with the conservative base. At a CPAC panel, she received a standing ovation when she doubled down on her claims, saying, "If the truth offends the Democrats, maybe they should change what they're doing, not try to cancel the messenger." Still, while Leavitt won cheers, from the right it was Crockett who appeared to be resonating with a broader swath of the country. Independents, moderates, and even some Republicans began to question whether the constant barrage of attacks on Kamala Harris and other women of color had crossed the line from political critique into something more insidious. Polls showed a small but significant uptick in Harris's approval ratings following the confrontation. More importantly, Democratic enthusiasm saw a measurable rise among key demographics: Black women, Gen Z voters, and first-time voters. Political strategists began dissecting the moment, noting how Crockett had not only defended Harris, but recentered the narrative around the why behind the attacks. She didn't just say it was about race. She showed how race and gender intersected with political narratives to silence and diminish certain leaders, and it clicked. Soon, other Democratic leaders started stepping into the ring. Representative Ayanna Pressley publicly thanked Crockett for bringing fire to a fight we've been told to enter with silence. Senator Cory Booker praised her for breaking through the noise with righteous clarity. Even President Biden made a subtle nod during a speech, saying, "We need voices who speak with truth and conviction, who don't back down when the going gets tough." It was clear Jasmine Crockett had become more than a congresswoman. She'd become a symbol. But with rising influence came increased scrutiny. Conservative media began combing through her past speeches, social media posts, and voting records. Some tried to portray her as extreme. Others accused her of being more interested in fame than legislation. Crockett responded in typical fashion, head on. In a direct-to-camera video posted to her Twitter account, she said, "Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide. I'm not here for celebrity. I'm here because too many people in this country are silenced, ignored, and mistreated by the same folks who now want to attack me for telling the truth." She then rattled off her accomplishments, sponsoring bills on criminal justice reform, fighting for voting rights, and securing funding for underserved communities in her district. The message was clear. This wasn't about ego. This was about justice. And with each passing day, the contrast between Crockett and Leavitt only sharpened. One represented the next generation of Democratic leadership, bold, intersectional, and deeply rooted in lived experience. The other symbolized the GOP's media-savvy insurgents, provocative, camera-ready, and unapologetically combative. Both were rising stars. Both had legions of fans. But the Crockett versus Leavitt clash underscored a bigger question that now hung over Washington. What kind of leadership does America want in its future? Do voters want sound bites or substance, passion or pragmatism, defenders of the status quo or disruptors of the narrative? As the 2024 election loomed, it became more and more clear that moments like this one, unscripted, emotional, and raw, would be the ones that shaped public opinion and moved the needle. Political consultants began adjusting their strategies. TV bookers rushed to land the next big confrontation. Social media platforms buzzed with anticipation for who would clap back next. But more than anything, this moment served as a turning point. Not just for Jasmine Crockett, not just for Kamala Harris, but for a Democratic Party trying to find its spine and a Republican Party pushing every button it can. The Crockett-Leavitt exchange will likely go down as one of those rare moments where politics peeled back its carefully staged layers and revealed something real. Not just conflict, but conviction. Not just outrage, but purpose. And whether you cheer for Crockett or Leavitt, whether you see this moment as heroic or hysterical, one thing is undeniable. The game has changed, and it's being played by a new generation, on their terms, in their voices, and with a level of heat this country hasn't seen in decades. Jasmine Crockett showed us what happens when you fight back, not with fear, but with fire. And if the roar of applause following her words was any sign, a whole lot of Americans are ready to stand with her.